League of Legends Story is a game that shadow dropped in the middle of the busiest week of my year. That being between SMT5, Pokemon BDSP, and roughly the same day as the Scarlet Nexus DLC Pack 1, among a bunch of other work I was busy doing at that time. Suffice to say, I didn't really have time to complete it that quickly. And would you look at that, Scarlet Nexus dropped another DLC pack, which delayed my completion even further. Anyways, today I'm here to review and talk about Ruined King, a League of Legends story. To preface this review, I don't like League. I played it for 7 years, and I just don't really enjoy it. That being said, I'm not averse to the characters or the world of League, but it also means I have some mild context to these characters and names they mention in the game. I don't read the lore at all, but I understand the basic concepts of most of the champions in the game. This gives me some additional edge to understanding the characters, or at least contextualizing things that they talk about. So we're going to start off with the good stuff, and I'll get into the bad in a bit. So, lore-wise, I'd say League has always been decently strong. The world of Runeterra is pretty interesting overall, and it's not perfect. But the teams at Riot who put together this universe make interesting characters with potentially entertaining backstories. If you've watched Arcane, you've likely been told that you shouldn't play League. And your mileage may vary, but nothing in League is close to any kind of entertainment you get out of the TV series, and it's much closer to a shouting PvP match that really hurts your brain and is not very fun. Like I said, your mileage may vary, but anyways. Ruined King, on the other hand, is probably the closest you'll get to Arcane. The game centers its story around the region of Bilgewater, which is a port town filled with pirates, muggers, and lawlessness. You start off being introduced to Sarah Fortune, or as many League players may know her as Miss Fortune. You get several introductory sequences to your main cast, and as you may note, half of them come from not Bilgewater. Braum is from the icy region of the Freljord, while Yasuo and Ahri hail from Ionia. You have a decently diverse cast of characters who all have their own backgrounds and motivations for this story to turn out. The game itself is turn-based, and it runs on a system similar to games like Child of Light, to some degree. And I really never played anything with this system, so I really don't have anything to compare it to. So you're gonna have to bear with me on that comparison. Your characters go in some kind of turn order, and you have a choice between instant actions and lane actions. Instant actions are, as their name implies, instant. They have no cast time and typically have low recovery time. The time between your character's next turn is that recovery time. So it's not an exact traditional turn-based game where you all pick an action and then you go. It's more turn-based in the sense that depending on your last action depends on when you'll go next. Now, lane actions, on the other hand, allow you to select a lane, which is divided into speed, balance, or power, which alter the output of your attack. Speed grants lower cast times and recovery time, but also lower the damage output. Power has a higher cast time and recovery time, but will have increased damage, and balance strikes somewhere in between, but it's not always a 50-50 ratio. Additionally, sometimes there will be boon and bane fields. You can aim your characters in by changing what moves they use. So let's say a bane field is in the power lane, and by doing a certain move, you put your character in there when they perform their move. That Bane field will activate on them before they can perform their move, and you will receive that Bane. Works the same way for Boon field. It's kind of hard to explain without a visual, so it's on the screen. Hopefully, if my brain isn't stupid enough not to edit it in. Anyways. The system sounds fairly complex, and it adds layers to the combat that separate it from the crowd. Your character's abilities can be upgraded with ability points that you get access to, and you can also upgrade and add passives to your characters via the rune system. These points are obtained by leveling up, And you can also enchant your equipment to add new effects, such as increased crit damage or bonus stats. You can also fish to obtain black marks, which can be used to obtain additional rune points for your runes outside of leveling up. The common combo tends to be that you level up, you get a ability point or a rune point, and it kind of alters in between until you hit the max level. In terms of combat, Rune King has the complexity that you can very easily get used to after a few hours. I never lost a battle on normal outside of the arena fights, which are just challenge battles, but I still think I was challenged about my actions. I assume higher difficulties will create scenarios more difficult than my experience. And I will say this about enchanting: if you're one of those players who likes to save all of your stuff just in case you get something better, I recommend not doing that purely out of the virtue of enchanting stuff will make your game easier, and if you're not stupid like me, you'll enchant your equipment with better options, because I didn't enchant until literally the last fight in the game. So, there's that. In terms of story, Rune King does a good job setting up interesting characters with their own personalities and motivations. Every time you reach a new rest point, there will be new conversations between specific characters, allowing you to peer into their personalities and understand them more. For someone entirely unfamiliar with League, you may find yourself questioning several things here and there, though. Since I am familiar with it, I was used to hearing names of characters I knew and events I had known about a bit. However, I imagine someone coming with less League knowledge might have a bit of trouble understanding some things. I think the overall plot is decent. There are a few issues, but I will touch on that later in the next part of the video, so bear with me on that. Music-wise, I think the tracks are decent, and I got a bit sick of some of the overworld themes. And to me, none of the songs are anything I'd listen to on my downtime, but they fit thematically and create a cohesive experience for the player. Sound effects are pretty solid. They make hits sound meaty and powerful. And visual-wise, the game kind of looks like League. The models are of decent to mediocre quality, but typically nothing that will drop your jaw. On top of that, there are some comic-esque cutscenes, which give the game its own unique flair as well. So I want to talk about movement, because that's a big thing in this game. I don't like movement in this game. The movement is bland and boring, and it feels like I'm playing League. Characters move slow, and running really doesn't change that speed too much. And on top of that, the amount of backtracking you have to do side quests, to get certain items, to get some equipment, and even just in the main story, it makes these problems all the more obvious. And when you add on to that the fact that you need certain characters to do certain actions, you need them in your active party, and the only place you can change your active party, as far as I could tell, was at rest points. So if you leave a rest point, you go halfway through a dungeon, and there's a little thing that says, oh, you need Illaoi. Then you have to go back to the rest point, get Illaoi, go over, do the puzzle, congratulations. Now you're stuck with Illaoi when you didn't intend to use her. It's just annoying, right? The best way to circumvent this is to predict which characters you're going to need for each area. However, that is not as easy as it would seem. Even adding small flares like jumps or dashes to kind of boost me forward would do wonders for this game. Just something, a little more interactivity besides me running. And there is fast travel, but only from certain areas that are in, and only to certain locations. So let's say you want to go to one area in the middle of the map. You can't go there. You have to fast travel to the area that's 2 spaces over, walk from that fast travel point all the way over to that area. It's not fun. The movement in this game is just not fun. It's a very basic movement system, and it doesn't do much for me. In some locations, it's not a huge deal, but it's really annoying to do. Once you get to a certain point in the game, you're probably not going to feel like doing it too much anymore. And I even used a guide for some stuff, purely just to avoid backtracking. And I really only use guides when I'm doing a review, when I'm playing through a game for the first time, if I get stuck. Like, if I'm stuck for a solid 15 minutes, and I genuinely don't understand why I'm stuck, I will try to look for a guide. But if I know why I'm stuck, if I know, you know, how to deal with that, I won't bother using a guide. The problem is that this game makes backtracking such a pain in the ass that you might as well just use a guide, and it sucks. It doesn't ruin the game by any means, but it did hamper my enjoyment a lot, and it's part of the reason it took me so long to complete this, despite this being shorter than pretty much every other game that I usually review. And the game is still kind of littered with bugs. Some text boxes will appear when you aren't even talking to someone, and they'll just linger as you walk away, or they'll loop back around once you've fully cycled through them. And sometimes you apply shields in fights and it won't immediately show up on the UI, and sometimes the UI will just mess itself up. I had a fun experience where I was interacting with a item in a dungeon, and then a enemy was able... So the game didn't pause enemy movement, so the enemy aggroed onto me and pulled me into a battle, and that menu UI was stuck there for the whole time. Which is very funny, but yeah, I don't think that should be a thing in your game. I think when you interact with an object, the game, like the overworld, should just essentially pause. I don't really care if it freezes or if it just, you know, keeps the enemies running in place or whatever, but you shouldn't have to deal with that mix-up, is what I think, at least. The bugs are simply minor inconveniences, though. They're not game-breaking, so it's fine. These points sound like huge things that made me, like, hate the game. No, they are minor inconveniences that I think can be improved upon. There are also a few plot points that feel like the resolution just kind of happens. Not to say there isn't emotional development leading up to those moments, but it feels weak compared to the other stuff that's in this plot that feels earned. And I don't really feel like I need to get into spoilers for this review, so I won't. Just know that not everything in this game's storytelling is perfect. And overall, while there are some flaws within the game itself, I feel like the game is still a solid experience. Ruined King does something I've wanted for a while. I can experience League without playing League. It's a great thing, since I don't like it, and I haven't liked League in years. If you're someone coming from Arcane, I think this is probably the next best thing. A single-player, story-based game is near perfect for people who just want more stories. The game itself, I think, is pretty good, and it has a pretty intricate combat system with its own unique flair. The presentation is solid, and I think the cast of characters is a lot of fun. Plus, you'll get some insight to other areas in Runeterra that are not shown in Arcane and are not actually directly shown within Ruined King either. And the story is decent as well. And it has its moments of weakness, and those being the movement in the game, with a few minor bugs, but the experience overall is, I think, a good one. Just know it took me some time to get through this due to the way movement works and why I'm such a sucker for good movement in video games. You'll come to realize it's mostly because of this. It's because when movement is boring, it hampers my enjoyment of the game. So the game clocks in at about 35 hours for the main story and about 40 to 45 for the side content. So for a $30 experience, I'd say that's pretty good. If you're one of those people who's looking for, you know, X amount of hours for X amount of dollars. It's a good game, and I hope Riot continues to tell stories of Runeterra outside of League of Legends. Please, Riot. Which I know they are. They have a game centered on the fun little pair, Nunu and Willem, coming out sometime down the line. Looking forward to that, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a huge puzzle game guy, but we'll see. We'll see. Might might dip outside of my comfort zone for that. Anyways, this has been Tiller. Thanks for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more reviews and such. Look forward to next week, where I probably will be covering my top games of 2021, unless something else comes out that week, which, you know, that would not be great, I'll be honest, because I kind of just want to, I don't know, actually it might be a good thing, who knows. Anyways, see you guys next week. Have a good one.